What's up guys, Chris and Grizzly here from Vo-Gus Prospecting. If you're new to the channel, a big warm welcome, and if you're an old moldy hat like this one, welcome back. Today I'm going to give you some of the tips and tricks, the trade secrets of gold prospecting that I use to find better deposits. Now, the spot behind me you might recognize from a video I did not too long ago where I pulled out 3/4 of a gram doing my test panning day. I've come back here with the SDC just to see if there aren't any little nuggets or pickers hiding on the bedrock. Otherwise, I'm just going to dip the pan in and see what we get. You can use a metal detector to find fine alluvial gold without actually having to detect the pieces of gold. And you can do this in two simple ways. The first, but more uncommon thing that is included in some metal detectors is a ground mineralization indicator. This indicator gives you an idea of how much heavy dense minerals are underneath the coil at the current time. Ideally, this is used to help you tune your machine in. But you can use it to identify where the water's dropped away the heavies, such as ironstone, tin, and black sand. By digging down where the machine says that there's a lot of ground minerals, chances are it's going to be putting you very close to where you need to be digging. The other way is to simply identify metal targets. It doesn't matter if it's steel, aluminium, lead, or even a piece of gold. The fact that your machine's picking up metal, which is generally heavier than all the rocks surrounding it, is a good sign that you're on the right track to digging down where it's dropped out heavy things such as gold. And the best thing about this is that it doesn't matter the price point of your metal detector. You can go out there with a $100 unit or a $4,500 unit. They both ultimately tell you exactly where heavy metallic items have dropped out, and that's what you're looking for, not necessarily directly for the gold. I got heaps and heaps of little tiny popping noises through here, which is probably a good indication of bits of lead, shotgun pellets, most likely. So instead of digging them out individually, which would take forever, it's going to pan them. What I'm doing here is taking samples from the soil where the SDC gave me little popping noises, which are really indicative of having things like shotgun pellets or very small pieces of metal underneath that coil. And the results speak for themselves. We got gold straight away without having to do any guesswork. You waiting for rock? Oh, I think I see Chris. Rock? This one, that's too sharp. This one perhaps. Go up. You having fun up there? Whilst the results in the first pan gave me hope that there would be good gold in this spot because the spec sizes were okay, the spec count overall was down. Now this is something important to remember when you're test panning. The number one rule is your results have to be able to be replicated, which means that you need to be able to get the same amount and same size of specs in almost every single pan. So you need to do at least 3 or 4 in one spot to know fully if this is a spot worth working. Beyond that, you need to also make sure that it's worth your time. The spec size in this case was good, but the spec count was quite low. Ideally, you would do multiple test pans so you could figure out where the gold deposit was sitting. Getting gold like this straight off the bat is a really good indicator that I was close to a deposit, but not yet on top of one. Yeah, that's a bit better of a pan. Not too shab at all. Have you been in the water? You're wet. You're sad about being wet. Next pan wasn't quite as good. The trick I'm using today is something you can do anywhere there's bedrock. what I did first was go over it with a metal detector. You don't need a metal detector, but I went over it and I got some signals. Now we're finding decent gold where I was getting those little popping signals, and those little popping signals are likely to be pieces of lead or small pieces of scrap iron. But what you're really looking for are these trenches here. These trenches work just like sluice riffles, and when I cleaned this out on one of my earlier videos that I've linked above, that trench held a lot of gold, but 0.72 of a gram, which is really good. Now, looking along this creek edge, there's going to be a lot more of those. What you want to do is, if you can, come to the side profile. Don't worry about looking on top for the crevice. Come to the side profile where the creek's already done all the work for you, and have a look along this edge and see if you can't identify any divots. Now, looking along that edge, it's all pretty flat. There will be gold all through it. However, just here, there is a bit more of a dip. It's hard to show you because that's like waist deep down there, so I'm not going to jump in. But that little area down there is potentially another one of those dips there. So once I run a couple more pans from this spot, if the gold doesn't get any better, I will move over to here and strip off that overburden to see if that bedrock does hold any nice little dips, divots and crevices for me to work. And it didn't get any better, so I moved on. By the looks of it, that crevice is about here. So we're going to start taking some dirt out of it, because back there was just yielding the same sort of gold every single pan. Really nice consistent gold, not complaining with it. But I know that if I find a good crevice, I could increase my chances of finding some fantastic gold. Oh, I'm so paranoid every time a bit of grass touches my foot, it feels like a leech. Ooh! I wasn't expecting that, because there was just sand in that pan. There, coarse little bits just there. That's the gold we got for that pan, and considering that I only got sand out and I'm definitely not in the deepest part of that crevice, that's really good. You reckon this one, is this a good one? Is it a good one? Well, I didn't quite get the same size specs, but I got a hell of a lot more. Tons of micro in there, tons. I got a little bit deeper down into that crevice there, and something that I found very interesting that I wanted to pass on to all of you guys was that the indicator minerals, the ironstone in this case, got much larger and more plentiful. And generally speaking, in any area when the indicator minerals get bigger, there's a good chance that the gold is also going to get better, which is exactly the case that we have here. I found some pretty decent gold for one single pan, almost on the bottom of that crack. Something I think that is very misunderstood about gold pans is that it's not just a tool used to separate gold from the dirt. It's also a tool that's used to find the best deposits of that gold. And you do that by reading the spec counts in your pan. Is it getting better or is it getting worse? But also those indicator minerals, because gold will follow the same rough line as where the iron, the steel, the lead shot, the black sands, the tin also go. So if you've got very little black sand and very little gold, well then hunt the black sands. You can visually see black sand and ironstone just sitting on the ground, which is often a way that I use to hunt for gold. And I'll give you an example just here. This is a mullock pile that got washed out in the floods a little over a year ago. And the water has concentrated this mullock pile with the larger, heavier rocks. It's moved all the silt away for us. In my experience in this area, these brown rocks that we've got here, these are the ones that are a little bit denser and they tend to sit close to where the gold is. And if I step back a little bit, you can see a line of them. There's a nice line of brown rocks traveling through here, and far more quartz and lighter colored rocks off to this side. So if I was going to take my pans, the first pan I would take would be from in this area. The indicator minerals in your area could be different. I deal with a lot of ironstone and iron-rich rock content. Depending on where you are from, it could be anything from like black sand to even just simply lead shot. It's up to you to figure out which one's the most plentiful in your area, and once you do, learn how to find it. And by finding that, because it's far more abundant than gold, it's much easier to find your gold deposits by following those heavy indicator minerals. The very next pan that I collected was full of very dense, thick and sticky clay that required a lot of time to break up to see what kind of gold result was in it. And I'm going to explain why this is not always a good idea on the creek. Yeah, not very much in that pan. Not very much. And that's mostly because of that clay. Now I know it's hard, but don't get caught up in the hysteria of finding clay. Clay creates a false bottom, a layer gold cannot permeate unless it's very, very large. When you find clay acting as a false bottom in an area that traps gold, so a crevice, a dip, a depression behind an obstruction, traditional places you would find gold, well, there's going to be a layer. There's going to be a layer that sort of ranges from a couple of inches to maybe a foot above it to a couple of inches on top of the clay that has your best gold. That layer is very, very thin when it comes to just the clay. If you dig out a shovel full of clay that's this big, maybe this much of it will have gold and rock in it. The rest of it likely doesn't unless it's a very large piece. My suggestion is very simple. What I want you to do is just take the layer that has rock in it. Don't worry about the rest of it for now. Fill a bucket up with nothing but the clay that has no rock in it. Take it home, dry it up, crush it up to powder and run it through your home setup system, so whether that be a cleanup sluice or with your pan. This will give you a bulk sample and a better idea of what's in the clay with no rock in it. If you're finding negligible results, don't worry about chasing it and breaking it up on the creek. It's probably not worth it. If you're finding really good results, it means that you can go ahead and continue to work it. And there's always the option, if you have one, to use a metal detector to scan over that clay to make sure there aren't any big nuggets hiding deep down in it. Well, we're still getting those really nice coarse heavies and some beautiful gold in every single pan. Have a look. Every pan's coming out like this with gold, and the associated heavies are very, very large and dense. The only problem is that the temperature's creeping up. It's meant to be like 38 today, and the humidity's off the charts, as well as the UV index is meant to be about 11 today, which is really extreme. So I don't know how many more pans are going to get done. It's only about 8:30 in the morning. I got here at 7, so we've only maybe done about 10 to 15 pans in the time that I've been here. I really want to get more because we're starting to get down to the bottom of that crack. What you thinking about, Grizz? Look at the speck count in that. That's really good. Grizzly, do you reckon we should tell the people about how I almost fell down the bank trying to retrieve the camera for the time lapse? Yeah, no, I don't think we should either be embarrassing. These tips aren't the only things you need to know to become a proficient and effective gold prospector. It's a combination of knowledge, experience, and effort. These tips will help narrow your search down by far, but you're still going to need to know some of the principles of gold prospecting so you can look for the areas of low pressure or high friction. Where to dig for gold in the first place is something that's fundamentally crucial to your success as a gold prospector, and you're only going to get that by testing everything. I mean, you can read 1,000 articles online and watch 1,000,000 YouTube videos, and they're all going to tell you different things. So it's ultimately up to you to go out into your creek and start testing everything. Something that's really not talked about in the context it should be talked about is the use of your equipment. You don't just want to have the best equipment that's idiot proof, it's super simple to set up, but you also want to know how to use that idiot proof equipment. If you don't know how to use your pan properly and you don't know how to use your sluice properly, well, you're not going to have the same results as someone who does. And it doesn't matter how good your sluice is if it's set up incorrectly. It doesn't matter how good your pan is if you don't know how to efficiently pan. Combining all these things is how you're going to end up becoming a good prospector. So when you finally get out into the field, you'll know where to look. I'm just going to scratch out a couple more pans before I call it quits, because the humidity and the heat out here is getting unreal, and I kind of just want to go home, put my feet up and play Call of Duty, you know? Well, all I managed to find was another super straight nail. After checking the bedrock with the metal detector and only finding a bullet and old nail, I'm pretty confident that there's no large nuggety bits hiding down there just yet. So we're going to take this stuff home. I'm going to show you all the gold. We're going to weigh it up and see how much we got for about 15 to 20 pans worth of a morning gold prospecting session. Now that I've got you home, I'm going to show you all the gold we got for about 10 to 15 pans worth of very hot, sweaty, stinky gold collecting. This is all the gold that we got for those 10 or 15 pans, next to a Clash Guitars pick for a little bit of scale, and an Australian 5-cent coin. Let's get this gold on the scales so we can find out how much we made. First, the lead that we got. Quarter of a gram of lead. And up next, we have the shiny, delicious gold. Also, about quarter of a gram. This is all the gold I've collected on film for the start of 2020 so far, and we're going to add that quarter of a gram to it, which brings our total up to about 3.75 grams. Even though this video is coming out in February, that video was actually filmed in January, and I've got, I think, 3 more coming, so the January total for gold is quite good. At the time of filming, gold's worth $75.66 per gram Australian. And that means that the gold that we got today is worth roughly $25. Now, it has to be said, gold isn't 100% pure when it comes out of the ground. I'm very lucky to live in an area where our gold fluctuates somewhere between 22 and 24 carat, which is really good. So our spot price will generally be a little bit higher. You can expect someone to buy your gold at a little bit less if you're just selling it as raw gold, which means that I'm more than likely coming out with like $65 to $67 a gram at the moment for that gold. Not the full $75. But that depends a little bit on how you'd sell it as well. Selling it as pay dirt, you expect to pay for the person's time in producing that product, and you can easily get about 100% more, because what you're paying for is the fuel and the trip and the equipment that went out to mine that gold. So it could conceivably be possible that that gold would be worth around $50 if I sold it as pay dirt. And this is really important information to know if you plan on doing this to sell gold. You're unlikely to ever get the absolute top minimum spot price. But for all intents and purposes, the gold in our area is worth roughly what the spot price is worth. Whether you can get that for it is another question. And at the end of the day, what about the fun? I mean, going out and spending a morning doing some gold panning in the bush with your dog, it's priceless. It's what I'd rather be doing than selling my gold for a little bit of money. Who cares about that when you can go out and enjoy yourself? If you've enjoyed this video, chances are you'll enjoy the other videos on my channel. There's heaps of gold prospecting content, from metal detecting, sluicing and gold panning, to help you get out in the fields and find more of that shiny. A like, a share, and a comment also go a long way to helping me grow this channel bigger and better for you guys. And subscribing is completely free, giving you access to heaps and heaps of information, not just on my channel, but many others that I work hand in hand with. And I've been getting a few questions regarding my merchandise line, which is, if I actually have one, and I do, it's linked in the description below. So if you'd like to check out some of the merchandise I've got for sale, everything that you need to know is down there. So I hope these tips have been handy for you in your search for gold, and let me know how you go in the comments below. Did any of these tips help you out when you're out in the field? Until next time guys, please give your dog a scratch behind the ear for me. Peace, I'm out.